awards in total, including 10 awards. An absolute pleasure to have you here today. Srijit Mukherjee, may I request you to kindly come on stage, please. And a huge round of applause for Srijit Mukherjee. Good evening and a warm welcome. When it comes to depicting love, which is soulful and magical, there is no other name that comes to mind than Imtiaz Ali. The filmmaker writer has given Hindi cinema some of its most seminal modern-day romances. Imtiaz's magical pen and unbridled imagination has given us films like Socha Na Tha, Jab We Met, Love Aajkal, Rockstar, Highway, and more. His transition into streaming saw him deliver the winner, She, for Netflix, and his next film, Chamkila, will directly release on Netflix. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Imtiaz Ali. Put your hands together, please. A very warm welcome to you and good evening. And the moderator for this session is Priyanka Roy. She is Assistant Editor Films with The Telegraph T2. She loves a good conversation on cinema and enjoys critiquing films, good, bad, and gentlemen, our very own Priyanka Roy. Please welcome her on stage. A very warm welcome, ma'am, and good evening. And I will hand over the session to you now, ma'am.
Thank you. A pleasure, seeing a full house out here. And I welcome all our guests, Srijit, Imtiaz, and Swastika. Thank you for making it here. And for this topic, in terms of, whether streaming platforms present a new yardstick for success of films, I couldn't have thought of three better people on this panel. So thank you so much. I wanted to start off on a lighter note by kind of plonking you guys on the other side of the table and asking you that if you had to be the audience, Netflix, in its bid to gauge, viewership ratings and all of that, kind of categorizes viewers into three broad categories, which is, starters, watchers, and completers. Starters are those who watch at least 2 to 5 minutes of a film or a series and then leave it. And watchers are those who watch at least 50% or 50 to 70%. And completers are those who watch 90% or more. In what category would you generally be in terms of how you consume content on streaming platforms? Should we start with Srijit?
Yeah, why not? I would say watchers and completers mostly, because I feel, maybe because I tell stories and I make films as well, I think a fair chance should be given. So even if I am not absolutely hooked onto something in the first 2 or 5 minutes, I would at least persist for, let's say, 50% of the story or the narrative, and then take a call. If it still, doesn't engage me, then possibly I move on, but otherwise I complete it.
But is there like a recent starter example that you would like to give, where you started and couldn't go beyond a few minutes?
No, luckily, the last 2 web shows, not films, web shows that I've watched, I've completed it and watched it actually. So, Kala Pani and Red Women. So these 2 I've absolutely completed.
Imtiaz?
I think I'm a new category. It's called repeater. I love repeating the shows that I've seen one time, and it also, it's much less tense. This whole question of am I going to like it or not, there's so much content, but and because of so much content, it's such a big decision to actually watch something. And I find myself being very anxious about should I watch this or should I watch that. You know? So repeating has become like a comfort thing for me. I keep repeating. So I tend to be a completer, and I tend to be Narcos and several times. A lot of shows that I like I've seen 2 times. Even there's a show called The Wire. It's a very old television show actually, and I recommend everyone to watch it. Some 5 or 6 seasons I've seen 2 times. So I like repeating.
Yeah.
I do a lot of recce and a lot of studying before what I want to watch because I want to watch them at a go, and I only opt, to watch long series if I know I can watch it in one night or maximum 2 nights back to back. Because otherwise I keep forgetting as to what has happened in one of the episodes, and I have to go back and re-watch that entire episode to bring my memories back. And I do watch a lot of those documentaries that are there on Netflix because they are limited series and they have 3 to 4 episodes, so it's just less time consuming. I did finish the Squid Game one, which has just come out.
Yeah,
The reality
Squid
show
Game
based
challenge.
on, yeah. So that I watched, and of course I watched Kala Pani.
Right. Okay. Okay, so once we get into this topic that we're going to be talking about today, for each of you, irrespective of platform or medium, what for you makes for a successful film?
For me, I think the success of a film primarily depends on 2 things. One, whether I am happy with the film or not, because my first audience is myself. And I have always maintained that whether a film succeeds or fails, there is no formula to it, at least none that I know of. So the only person I can cater to in that sense is myself.
Correct.
So I would make films which I would happily watch. So the first parameter is myself. And the second parameter, and the more external parameter, is, and mostly from the perspective of the producer, because he's the person who's investing financially in my narrative or in my dream or whatever, in my story, is it getting the maximum amount of audience that it is supposed to, or I expect it to. So that is purely an expectation-based parameter, and it's a combination of a quantitative and a qualitative parameter. It is quantitative definitely, but it is also qualitative because it's targeted. In the sense, I feel that after making a particular film, let's say if I look at my filmography, if I make a Nirbag, the expectation of its audience base, and let's say if I make a Zulfikar, or more recently a Dosham Avatar, the expectation of its audience base will be different. So, based on that expectation, am I getting that audience quantitatively or not? So if I get it, then of course it's a success. If I don't, then it's a failure.
Right. That's a good way of looking at it. Interesting. Imtiaz?
Everything that Srijit says is valid for me, I feel.
The advantage of starting off with the answers. You serve.
No, but everything that you've said actually makes all the sense to me and to most directors, I feel. Because you cannot also underplay the fact that somebody has invested money in us, in our dreams. And if we want to continue dreaming and making them into reality, we better make sure they get their money back.
Right.
And so I think that the kind of money that has been put in, has it those people that put it in. That is an important thing for me in a very impartial business-like way. Apart from that, I feel that it's a subconscious, like instinctive realization that, oh, I think this movie has been good, like successful. It's subconscious. There are so many facts and figures and so many people's opinions, and some people feel that, hey, how do you not realize that this film is a flop? And how do you not realize that this film is awesome? And so on and so forth. But there'll be somebody else having a completely different narrative as well, because films are so subjective, personal. But then still somebody over a period of time, it's like come to realize through ESP, extrasensory perception, that oh, this film is good or bad in terms of successful or unsuccessful. Tells you this is yourself actually, because आपको अंदर से पता ही रहता है. But that's what it is. I don't rely on any one particular thing, least of all critics, to tell whether a film has been successful or not.
Right. Swastika?
Are you a critic?
Yes.
I don't know, I think my take will be very different from the directors.
Yeah, of course.
I feel if your audience and people are still talking about the film after a decade or after 5-6 years, like me and Srijit, we were just discussing on our way to the auditorium that clips and parts of Jati Shore and Shahjahan Regency. Jati Shore released I think in 2013 and Shahjahan Regency in 2018. Every week people post clips of the scene on social media in different contexts, and they just constantly talk about it, or in that case, Bhuter Bhuvishwat.
Yeah, of course.
It released in 2010 and people are still talking about it, and wherever I'm traveling around the world, Bengali especially, but people who are not Bengalis also, I've met tons of them who have actually watched that film, more so after it has come on the OTT platform and it's available. And with this man sitting here, I think Jab We Met is my or tons antidepressant.
We are repeaters of that.
Repeaters, and it's just like a sunshine on a very dull day, and we have just gone back to the film for very different reasons, and it just has the same call and the same feeling. So I feel as an actor, if your work is getting, being watched and rewatched over decades, and people feel the same excitement and the enthusiasm and happiness watching it, I would really feel that this film is a successful film for me, whether I have been a part of it or not, because the repeat value is so huge.
Can I add something to that? It's a very, very nice example which Swastika just pointed out. So, Jatishwar and Shahjahan Regency, both according to her, and I totally agree, are in that sense successful films because people still talk about them, people still discuss them. But when they do that, they don't get released. They are the rare box office failures in my filmography. I wear it like a badge of honor because I think later, through OTT, through other modes, it got the audience which I expected it when I made it, for it to get. So which is why immediate box office return might not be the only parameter of a success of a film. And in fact, if you look at his filmography, Tamasha is an absolute favorite of mine. So is Rockstar, so is Sochanata. But none of them got the box office success of a Jab We Met or a Highway, possibly. But we still talk about these films. They are still, in fact, they are bigger cult films now than they were when released. So for a film to grow, there are more avenues apart from immediate box office which are needed to actually judge whether a film is successful or not.
Right. It's interesting that you mentioned that because my next question was that, and you've kind of partly answered it, is that would we then say that a film, say, which has maybe released directly to digital, or as you said, released in theaters first and then made its way to digital, could we say that it is more successful, quote unquote, relatively because it's there for a longer time, it's there for posterity, people have the